Disclosure: this video is sponsored by Call of War. Time to take a look at the forgotten backbone of the German tank force in World War II, namely the recovery tanks. While many talk about the Königstiger, of which only about 500 were produced, the recovery tanks, of which more than 800 were produced, are often completely forgotten. Additionally, their production dates and numbers are quite counterintuitive as well. For instance, the earliest produced and most produced recovery tank was based on the Panther chassis, while the recovery tanks based on the older Panzer III and IV were few and came later. If you want to learn why, stay tuned. Recovery tanks filled a crucial role. For instance, one unit reported that each Bergepanther recovered 20 tanks over a total distance of 600 kilometers. To put this in perspective, the German tank division layout 1944 had an organized strength of 162 tanks, so one Bergepanther recovered about 12% of a complete division. But first, a short message from our sponsor that made this video possible, namely the free online PvP strategy game Call of War. The game allows you to play a real country in World War II. If you're bored fighting AI, Call of War has you covered. Fight against up to 100 other players in real-time games that can take weeks to complete. The game features economy, research, and of course military units. As such, it requires strategic planning. Furthermore, you can engage in ground, air and sea combat. Various gameplay mechanics allow for crucial decision making. You can build your armed forces with infantry, flame tanks, strategic bombers and many more units. On the political level, you can use the diplomatic system to forge alliances with other players or declare war on them to take over the world. The game is fully cross-platform and you can use the same account on both PC and mobile devices. If you click on the link in the description, you get 13,000 gold and 1 month of premium subscription for free. The offer is only available for 30 days, so time to take action. Additionally, you help support this channel. Now there were several Bergepanzers, and you probably, like I did, would assume that the first Bergepanzer was the Bergepanzer VIII, followed by the Bergepanzer III and IV. Then the Bergetiger, Berge Ferdinand and finally the Bergepanther. Nope, absolutely not. The first was the Bergepanther and the Bergepanzer IV was the last one that was produced or better converted. The second produced Bergepanzer was the Bergepanzer Ferdinand, followed by the Bergepanzer III, then Bergepanzer VIII and finally the Bergepanzer IV. While at first this seems counterintuitive, the answer is rather simple. The Panther and Tiger with their 45 and 57 metric tons weight were the first tanks that required new recovery vehicles, since they could not be pulled by a single half-track that were generally used for recovery, namely the Sonderkraftfahrzeug IX, which could pull a weight of around 35 metric tons. To pull a Tiger or a Panther, 2 or 3 Sonderkraftfahrzeug IX were used. Additionally, at the time the Panther was introduced in summer 1943, the Wehrmacht had suffered several defeats and recovery vehicles had to be regularly operated closer to the enemy. This was a major problem for the unarmored half-tracks like the Sonderkraftfahrzeug IX, since they had no protection against small arms fire or shrapnel. As such, it makes sense that the Bergepanther was the first dedicated recovery tank. Note, there was a version of the Panzer I without superstructure that was used for maintenance and transporting spare parts, but this was not a recovery vehicle, and it was also called maintenance vehicle, Instandsetzungswagen I. So since we got that off the way, let us look at the Bergepanther, which was the most produced German recovery tank in World War II and is the best documented one. In total, around 450 Bergepanthers were produced or converted from existing Panthers. There were Bergepanthers of the Ausführung D, A and G. Additionally, they were quite diverse in their equipment. The large number of Bergepanthers is easily explained, since in the Panzerdivision 44 division layout, the tank regiment consists of 2 battalions, one issued with Panthers and one with Panzer IVs. It is often forgotten that the Panzer was mass-produced in comparison to the Tiger, which was not organic to regular Panzer divisions. Yet back to the Bergepanther. In March 1943, the order was given that 4% of the Panther production per month should be used for recovery vehicles, and that 3 additional Bergepanzers should be produced on top of that quota. Drawings from June 1943 show components that were specifically designed for the Bergepanther, like an armored shield for the 20mm autocannon, a 40-ton winch, a chip boob crane, large spades and other elements. Although the first Bergepanther that were finished in May 1943 were not equipped with those components. For instance, the first Bergepanther that was fitted with a winch in serious production was completed in May 1944. As a result, there are many different sub-variants of the Bergepanther, ranging from a Panther without turret and a simple cover for the turret ring, to Panthers with added superstructure instead of the turret, to one with a winch and large spades for stabilization. Also, some previous mentioned elements might never have seen action or only in small numbers. Jentz, Doyle and Friedli note about the 20mm autocannon. There is no evidence that the 2 cm Kampfwagenkanone was mounted on the Bergepanther other than the Versuchsfahrzeug, trial vehicle. Overall, a Bergepanther could pull a regular Panther in dry conditions, whereas in wet conditions generally 2 Bergepanther were capable of pulling a Panther, according to one report even on the worst mud road. Documents from 1945 show that the production of the Bergepanzers was planned with 25 per month into summer 1945, which indicates that the vehicle was successful or at least deemed as such. More about this in the discussion about effectiveness. Note that there was a vehicle that predated the Bergepanther, but we know next to nothing of it. No Heereswaffenamt, Henschel or FAMO records have been found proving that any of the schwere Abschleppfahrzeuge having towing vehicles VKZ 3501 were completed and accepted for issue. Nor have strange reports from any Tigerabteilung revealed that they have received any of these vehicles and used them at the front. Next is the Bergepanzer VI or Bergepanzer Ferdinand. Only 3 of these vehicles were produced. Considering that in total there were around 90 Ferdinand tank destroyers, this number is quite appropriate. Now the Ferdinand tank destroyer had a weight of 65 metric tons. As such, a dedicated recovery vehicle was needed. In June 1943 the order was given to convert 3 chassis to an armored recovery vehicle, and these were finished in August 1943. As such, these vehicles did not arrive for the Battle of Kursk and could not recover any Ferdinands. Major differences to the regular Ferdinands were, besides the lack of a gun, that there was no additional 100mm thick armor plate bolted to the front. In terms of performance, the Bergepanzer VI was a mixed bag. The main issue was that it was still a very large and heavy vehicle. According to Jentz and Doyle, it still had a combat weight of 60 metric tons, so not much more mobile than the tank destroyer. Yet on the other hand, there was not really another vehicle suitable that could have pulled the Ferdinands in a combat situation. Of course, one could argue to use Bergepanthers. The issue is the Ferdinands were used in independent anti-tank units. Adding Bergepanthers to these units would require to have spare parts and mechanics for Panthers as well. In terms of equipment, the Bergepanther was limited. Maintenance and recovery equipment carried on the Bergepanzer Ferdinand was very limited. A chip boob crane, similar to that designed for the Bergepanther, was stowed on the deck in the front of the superstructure. Brackets were welded to the base and sides of the superstructure as base plates and anchors for the chip boob pole and cross supports. Next in line is the Bergepanzer III. These were converted from existing Panzer IIIs. They also came rather late. The first ones were issued to the Army Ordnance depots in March 1944, so at a time when no more Panzer III were produced. As such, it is no surprise that these were generally issued to anti-tank battalions that were outfitted with Sturmgeschütze III, since Sturmgeschütze III used the Panzer III chassis. As done with other recovery tanks, the turret was removed. Additionally, large parts of an additional superstructure made of wood was added on top of the vehicle. This large box was designed for carrying the special equipment needed for recovering and repairing Panzers, including double pulleys, rigid tow bars, arms for chip boob crane, and roller sled for the Panzer Bergepanzer, tank recovery anchor. Bases for mounting the chip boob crane poles and pad eyes for anchoring the cross brace poles were welded to both sides of the rear deck. In total, about 167 were converted from March 1944 to March 1945. The Bergepanzer VIII was a recovery tank version of the Jagdpanzer VIII, which generally is called the Hetzer. Although in this case the superstructure sides were lowered, leaving an open top crew and equipment storage compartment. Furthermore, it had various modifications to attach tow cables. The first Bergepanzer VIII were completed in May 1944, and in total 181 were produced by the end of April 1945. Unlike the Bergepanzer III and IV, the Bergepanzer VIII were produced from scratch and not converted from existing vehicles. Generally, the Bergepanzer VIII was issued to anti-tank battalions that were outfitted with the Jagdpanzer VIII. Although the Panzer IV was the most produced German tank with around 8,500 built, in terms of recovery tanks, it was very rare. The total numbers are listed with 21 or 36 depending on the source. As far as we know, so far no photos have been found of this vehicle, although the ammo carrier variant of the Panzer IV is often mistaken for the Bergepanzer IV. Similar to the Bergepanzer III, these were converted from existing vehicles. Briefly, we need to talk about the Bergetiger. According to the records, there were 3 Tigers that were converted to Bergetiger in the field in 1944. Yet as far as we know, no photos were found of any of these. There are some photographs some people think that are the Bergetiger, yet Jentz and Doyle note that the vehicle was a converted Tiger, yet for the purpose of laying charges for clearing mines and other obstacles, so more of a demolition Tiger. Finally, we need to ask a question: how effective were these recovery tanks? This is hard to determine due to the limited records, yet considering the available records and the production numbers, their importance should not be underestimated. Here is a report from 1943. A report about the Bergepanther, therein called Bergeschlepper, was written by the 1st Battalion of the Panzer Regiment II on 25 October 1943. The Bergeschlepper proved itself to be excellent. During dry weather conditions, 1 schlepper is enough to recover a Panther. Even on the worst mud road, 2 schlepper can recover a Panther. Until now, each Bergeschlepper recovered 20 Panzers over a total distance of 600 kilometers. The Bergepanzer exclusively used by the Abteilung to recover Panzers out of the fire line back to the artillery positions. From the Abteilung's experience, 4 Bergepanzer are desirable even at the expense of 2 Zugmaschinen 18 tons, which was the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 9. Outfitting the Bergepanzer with radio sets have proven successful. During battle, they could easily be directed by radio. During dry conditions, 2 Zugkraftwagen are enough to recover a Panzer. But on wet and muddy roads, not even 4 Zugmaschinen can do it. The recovery distance averaged 500 kilometers. Keep in mind that for 1944 the heavy towing vehicle Sonderkraftfahrzeug 9 was also considered very important for recovery duties. To quote a study by Department of the German General Staff, without the required 18-ton Zugkraftwagen as towing equipment, tanks are irresponsibly lost. Therefore, the General Staff of the Army has had to decide to request an increase in production of towing vehicles by almost double compared to 1943. In this connection, the position is taken that other capacities can be offered by dispensing with the equipment previously manufactured there. Remember, those half-tracks had no armor protection in contrast to the Bergepanzers. To summarize, Germany introduced Bergepanzers in 1943 due to the necessity of recovering particularly Tigers and Panthers near the front line under enemy fire. Previously, unarmored half-tracks like the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 9 were sufficient, since they could pull tanks up to 35 tons, thus having no issue with the Panzer III and IV with up to 25 tons of weight. Another issue was that recovering under enemy fire was a problem for unarmored half-tracks, particularly once Germany was more and more on the defensive. The expansion of the production numbers and types of various armored vehicles shows that Bergepanzers were deemed important. In total, around 800 were produced of all types, which is more than of the famous Königstiger, of which a bit less than 500 were built. Now to be sure, click the link in the description and claim your bonus for the free online PvP strategy game Call of War. Get 13,000 gold and 1 month premium subscription for free, only for the next 30 days. Choose your country and create your strategy, win epic battles during World War II and fight your way to victory in Call of War. Thank you to Call of War for sponsoring this video. Thank you to Andrew for reviewing the script. Thank you for watching and see you next time.